Cowboy Bebop and what it means to be alive. Cowboy Bebop is one of the most well-known legendary anime of all time. The story covers space cowboys as they search for bounties filled with action, adventure, and philosophy. If you've heard of Cowboy Bebop, it's most likely because you either grew up watching Toonami or you've heard one of these legendary key phrases.
I'm not going there to die. I'm going to find out if I'm really alive.
Oh well. Whatever happens,
Happens.
Aside from the action and great storytelling, beneath the surface, the show actually asks a very philosophical question, and each character in the show has a different answer for themselves. Are they really living, or are they just alive? You might have heard this phrase be used in real life or in motivational speeches in other contexts, but it's actually a real question that most people don't even find the answer to, even in death. Now, instead of going through each individual character and the response to that question at hand, today we're going to just focus on the central main character, Spike Spiegel. On the surface, Spike may seem very cool and calm, but throughout the series, we get to see that internally, this is absolutely not the case. Spike constantly tries to find the answer to this question himself and lacks a purpose to the current world around him because he doesn't have an answer to why he's alive. This is because Spike is constantly looking at the past, stuck in stasis. He's trapped in those moments he can't escape from, and is forced to live in the current, all while seeing his past trauma play out over and over through what is called flashbulb memories. Flashbulb memories can bring excruciating pain to the heart and soul, and the world around seems like a fog, a dream. Things begin to seem pointless, and Spike takes this viewpoint to the extreme. We see this while he takes on tasks that are likely to get himself killed, and his response to the danger is the legendary line,
the landing wheels aren't retracting.
Yeah, and the number 2 nozzle won't work either.
What? Are you for real? We can't live
Oh, well.
without them. I knew I should
Whatever
have fucked you.
happens,
I'm only 18.
happens.
I don't want to die yet.
The reason Spike Spiegel is such a popular character isn't because of his cool looks and demeanor, it's because he's relatable in a very humane way. Fans love the concept of his character because of this, and I gotta say, the writers did a profound job on the very realistic take on what it's like to be in emotional stasis. I personally have experienced emotional stasis, and although it was not to the extreme that I was putting myself in intense danger like Spike, every other emotional pain, thought, and feeling was absolutely familiar. We as people usually assume that some grand amount of pain or a horrible event can cause someone to enter this damaged state, but actually, it's a lot closer to home than most people think. As the legendary villain Joker once said, all it really takes is one bad day.
There's no difference between me and everyone else. All it takes is one bad day.
1 minute life can be just fine, you find something precious, and the next it can be gone, and that's enough to make just about anyone turn to emotional extremities. Spike is no exception to this rule, and this is gradually amplified as the show goes on and his consciousness is flooded with the past along with the physical return of his enemies and past allies throughout the series. This is first highlighted in episode 1, where he states that he's already been killed by a woman once before, in the first time of the series referencing Julia, the love of his life. Spike met his anchor and explained in the episode The Real Folk Blues that before he met Julia, he didn't have any concept of living or dying. Any time was fine at all. He didn't care at all about life since nothing was ever important enough for him to care in the first place, but this all changed when he met her and when she disappeared without a trace, leaving him broken. For a little context, Spike met Julia while he was in the Syndicate, an old mob group that he eventually tried to flee since he wanted a different life and to take Julia with him. Things didn't go exactly as planned, and Spike never saw Julia again after the day he planned to escape. He was never able to find an answer to why she didn't come to the meetup, and he spent his years in regret and agony wondering why the only thing he deemed special vanished. Without the answers he needed for closure, Spike had stopped living once more and took this to an extreme by becoming a bounty hunter, almost looking for a way to die. But to him, either way, it didn't matter. His various bounty adventures range from simple bounty missions to fighting beings with immortality and advanced AI networks capable of destroying planets, and throughout it all, no matter how odd or difficult each task may have seemed, it just seems he can't die. And when he does come close to death, which he does several times throughout the series by the way, he seems at peace, only to be awoken back into his world with the answers he still doesn't have. This can be broken down into 5 main episodes, where the viewer can see how Spike's past deeply affects his psyche.
feel a thing, and I stop remembering. The days are just like moments turned to hours. Mother used to say, if you want, you'll find a way. But Mother never danced to fire showers. Walk in the rain, in the rain, in the rain.
The first episode we see this development is titled Ballad of Fallen Angels. The title itself hints at Spike's past and how he was like a fallen angel, fallen from grace and unable to return to his past where he wanted to be. The plot of the episode follows Spike finding out that one of his old mob mentors was killed by the Syndicate, and not just by anyone, but Vicious, Spike's old partner from when he was actually in the Syndicate. Spike spends the episode tracking him down, but in the process, Faye, a member of the Bebop crew, is kidnapped while investigating a bounty related to the case. So Spike comes to help, but only out of coincidence, and even tells her not to take his help personally, since all of it's for his own benefit. This shows a bit of Spike's character in the aspect that he's not a hero, and that he doesn't feel obligated to just help people unless it benefits him in some way.
I know why you're here, Spike.
Huh?
You wouldn't have come unless you needed some information, something important, right? Well, I'll help if I can, but don't ask me too much. So, what do you want to know?
Mao Yenrai.
The battle ends with Spike throwing a grenade while being stabbed and plunged through the window at the top floor, leaving Spike heavily injured and Vicious's fate unknown. The battle is important though, because while Spike is falling from what is his seeming death, he reminisces on the past and remembers being in a similar situation before when he tried to leave the Syndicate. It's tragic and yet somehow beautifully presented to them in a way that feels like a dream in itself. Spike remembers Julia singing to him in a familiar situation before when he was in a bad spot, and awakes on the couch of the Bebop to hear that it's not Julia but Faye instead who is singing to him while he was dreaming. This is the first time in the series we get a glimpse at how he views the world, and that beneath the lazy cool attitude, he has a complicated backstory that built his character to be so interesting for us viewers, and we get to see much more of this in the upcoming episodes. In Jupiter Jazz, we get a much deeper look into Spike's past and how he views the world as a whole. Jet asks Spike why this means so much to him, and Spike dodges the question, asking Jet in return how he lost his arm in a snazzy manner. This actually shows us just how closed off Spike is from the rest of the crew and other people around him. He doesn't let people get close into his own personal manners, and he doesn't like to review his past with people in public, especially when it comes to Julia. I believe this is in part due to the fact that Spike hopes he's right in finding her, while a part of him just wants to forget all about it and move on. Either way, Spike leaves the ship, giving it all up for the sake of finding his woman. Faye, incidentally, is also on the same planet after stealing from the Bebop and runs into a guy named Gren while escaping trouble, and is brought back to his apartment where she discovers that Vicious is still very much alive. After being shot and a grenade thrown at him, he's still very much kicking and is dealing business on Jupiter. Meanwhile, Spike was looking for intel on Julia's potential whereabouts to try and figure out where she is, and runs into some thugs who seem to think that he is Vicious due to the fact that Spike asked about the name, which apparently is the code name Vicious uses for his business transfers. Now this is pretty dirty due to the fact that Vicious knows the history between Spike and Julia, and to use her name to lure Spike out is pure jacked up. Even for a villain, that's top-notch level tomfoolery, and I gotta respect it. That's what it means to be a true villain, and Vicious definitely follows up with doing so. This encounter is especially important because this is one of the first instances in the series where we actually see Spike fully out of character and furious at the comparison. Spike loses his temper and fights all of them head on, oddly enough in a very vicious manner. Yes, pun intended. And doesn't hold back at all, getting the intel he needs to track down Vicious. We get to see how much Spike actually loathes Vicious as a character, as he uses a fighting style that's based on not tensing up in such an aggressive way. For context, Spike's fighting style is based on Bruce Lee's, and is supposed to be a reflection of Spike's personality, a go-with-the-flow type of art style. Vicious is a part of the past that Spike can't seem to escape, and can't stand that he actually used to be like him, and this won't be the last time we see this in the series. Fast forward a bit, and Grant tracks down Vicious seeking answers to why a comrade would sell him out and lie to save himself. In a cold manner, Vicious explains he was just a tool at best.
I'm a servant of the world. And if I'm a servant, then you should consider yourself a tool at best.
The two confront each other, and Spike joins the fight in an epic three-way dogfight where Gren dies taking a shot from Vicious and crash landing. Spike shows empathy for Gren and asks of Julia's whereabouts, where Gren notices Spike's different eye colors, commenting that Julia has spoken about him before. But sadly, he has nothing for Spike since Julia didn't give any whereabouts to where she was heading next. In the end, Spike reached another dead end and can't be reunited with her, but he finds out that she is still alive and roaming the asteroids from planet to planet. We get much more information on not just Spike and his backstory, but plenty of hinted information about Julia and Vicious' backstory as well, not to mention the type of character Vicious is. This episode serves as a mid-series finale and ends up with two nomads gazing the stars. While they spot a shooting star, the younger asks the elder nomad a question. These nomads aren't particularly important to the story, but the elder shows up numerous times throughout, and the message the elder is giving portrays Spike's character as the lost warrior's soul. He can't find his way to a destination, desperately searching for what he has lost, while being in deep pain, so close to Julia and yet so far away. The tear of a warrior falls from the sky as he stays in his dream evermore. I have one more outline of Spike's viewpoint and events that shaped his character, but before I cover the finale, I have to talk about the many cases of foreshadowing in the series, giving us hints at the ending and Spike's growth in the series as a whole. The episode Symphony of the Devil is one of the best early examples of Spike's character being fleshed out without revealing his actual backstory. In the very first few minutes of the episode, we start with subtle, harmonic, beautiful music playing, and we get a glimpse of Spike's point of view and how he remembers getting eye surgery to replace his eye after an accident. We never actually find out exactly what happened to his eye prior to the surgery, but it is alluded to that it was replaced before he joins the syndicate. In the series, it's stated by Julia, Gren, and finally by Spike himself that his eyes are two different colors and that one is brighter than the other. His eye color may seem like something trivial, but his eyes symbolize his past and his present. His left eye is a few shades darker, symbolizing his past filled with dread, despair, and heartbreak, leaving him in the state we see him in when he is most vulnerable, and that is when his past catches up with him, both Julia and Vicious casting a shadow over him. His right eye is brighter, symbolizing his present, where he is a bounty hunter and is allowed moments of happiness away from his inner pain. This is important because in different points in the series, we can see why he is so conflicted with reality. His own reflection is a symbol in itself, and that's something you can't run away from. In the finale, Spike says to Faye,
Look at my eyes, Faye. One of them is a fake because I lost it in an accident. Since then, I've been seeing the past in one eye and the present in the other. So I thought I could only see patches of reality, never the whole picture. I felt like I was watching a dream I'd never wake up from.
This explains Spike's nature in itself throughout the show and why at some points he is very empathetic and kind, like where we see Spike get a student who wants to learn his fighting style but is killed later in the episode, or when Spike waits for Faye after her past is shattered like glass, a feeling Spike knows too much about, showing that he actually does care about her. But then other times Spike comes off as very cold and distant. This is because he's still trying to figure out who he is and wants to be, and is afraid to let anybody help him out with that decision, especially since he's already lost everything once. This leads us to the last episode outside of the finale for the best foreshadowing in the series, titled My Funny Valentine, where Faye learns that the person who looked after her after waking up from stasis is still alive, and most of what she was told is false. She's broken, and Spike's response to the matter is that it doesn't really matter, and at least she has a future, implying that he himself doesn't.
I'm still in the dark. I may never know anything about my past.
Doesn't really matter, does it?
Easy for you to say. At least you have a past.
And you have a future. That's what counts.
He knew sooner or later his past would catch up to him, and in that outcome, there's a possibility he won't make it out alive. Spike is extremely self-aware of his situation and drops subtle hints and lines that both sound sincere and ominous that can only be caught by paying close attention to the meaning behind the words.
Anything could happen. It could blow sky high the moment it hits.
Kinda makes it interesting. I'm just watching a bad dream I never wake up from. One more time.
What's that?
I was killed once before. By a woman.
You take women too lightly, my friend.
On the contrary. Catch you later. Maybe this is the one I won't come back from. The end. Just playing with your head. Would you rescue me if it were true?
The ominous warning he gave Faye brings chills every time and is a warning that will become a reality in the best season finale of a character who goes out with a bang.
Bang.
In the series finale, we see Spike's progression come to a full crash with the past he was foreshadowing throughout the series. While Spike and Jet are at a bar, they get ambushed by members of the Syndicate. This is because Vicious tried to take control of the Syndicate and was caught and sentenced to death. In doing so, all people who are connected to Vicious are now being hunted down to be killed. That includes Spike and Julia, since they all used to work together. Once Spike learns of this, we get a flashback of him telling Julia of his plan to lead the Syndicate, and if they escape, it will be like a dream. These lines will be important for later in the finale, as they are very important to the foundation of the character and what goes on in the show later. Jet and Spike have a deep conversation and trade knowledge on how they view life. Jet says he hates stories where men only think about their past right before their deaths, as if they were frantically looking for proof that they were even alive. This is actually a callback to Spike throughout the series, and how many times while glancing with death from injuries, he did the exact same thing, and Jet has noticed over time. Spike doesn't know if he is alive, since he doesn't hold anything in value for long, with his past constantly looming over him while he's refusing to let it go. To further support this, Jet also states when they first met, Spike said that he had died once already, and questioned why Spike can't just let it go and forget about his past. Spike finally tells Jet about Julia, signifying the character's development and trust in Jet. This shows us just how much Spike loved Julia, and how she gave him a different point of view on life, and it's almost as if once Julia left, so did his reason for being. Jet tells Spike to go find what he lost, since he can sympathize since he's been through something similar, and Spike heads to the graveyard where he was supposed to meet Julia long ago. He reunites with Julia there, and it's revealed that she was supposed to kill him that night that they were supposed to meet up, and that she ran away because she couldn't do it. Spike and Julia later go to a shop, and the Syndicate surround the building to finish them both off, since Vicious tried to throw a coup. Spike is tired of running away though. Perhaps he was taking heed to what Jet said, and is tired of running away from his past, so he decides to face it and make a final stand. It's haunted him for years, and now that he has Julia, he wants to end it all and finally live in peace. However, Julia insists on staying with him to escape through the rooftop, but is fatally wounded. In one of the most beautiful yet tragic scenes conveyed, Julia passes away in Spike's arm, and he gazes up in anger with the black of his eyes symbolizing his fury and emptiness inside as black as the inner eye itself. Spike lived a very troublesome life, and things just never seemed to go the way he wanted, and this ultimately was the final straw. The struggle between his two lifestyles was ended, and this left him with one road ahead. Spike returns to the Bebop to gather munitions and finish what Vicious started with the one goal of taking him out. Spike for the last time reunites with Jet and tells him a story about a striped cat that reflects his lifestyle and how he's lived throughout the years. He hints in the end that he might not be coming back alive after this battle. Spike at this point didn't believe he could have a happy ending to his story. To him, being on the ship with Jet and the others was just a good story, but his past caught up to him, making him believe it wasn't real like the cat story, just a dream he had to eventually wake up from. Spike was never really able to let go of his past and was only able to see patches of reality. The dream he describes to Faye that he was watching was him and the others living in peace as bounty hunters. He was worlds away from his past, surrounded by a group of individuals who were so different yet so alike, all being outcasts living in a family-like environment. But before he knew it, his past caught up to him, with the syndicate being taken over and the love of his life gone. The dream of peace and fun times was over for good. Spike leaves claiming one of the most memorable and deep quotes in anime history.
What are you going to do? Just throw your life away like it was nothing?
There was no place for me to return to. This was
I'm not going there to die. I'm going to find out if I'm really alive. I have to do it, Faye.
He's been living in a fog all this time, one eye in the past and the other in the present. To him, the only way to figure out if any of this was real is to see if he really is alive by settling his battle with Vicious and moving on towards death. Spike sees this as the only solution, and Vicious acknowledges that Spike was in fact in the dream and that he was the only one who could wake him up, referencing how he planned this from the start and was planning on getting Spike to come for him eventually by any means necessary. After Spike is victorious, he looks at the sky with his right eye. The brighter symbolizing his past is dealt with, and the darkness that has been looming over him was put out by the light. Julia's last words are finally revealed to Spike, and she says it's all just a dream, which is a huge motivator for Spike to find out whether she was right or not, whether it's really a dream or if he's alive. Though Spike's fate is never actually revealed and is left to the viewer's imagination, it's clear that this relaxed character is relatable for more than one reason. The character highlights what trying to escape your past can do to you and sets an example for what can happen if you don't find out what it means to actually live. I may dive into each individual character's response to the question of what it means to live, as the other characters on the Bebop crew have a different response to their life traumas and find different answers on what it actually means to be alive. Moving on in life is what it means to live, and many don't actually know the difference or have the strength to find out. Living is without chances, without risks, the mundane, but to be alive is to do the opposite and continually get answers, as many of the support cast in Cowboy Bebop have done. In the end, we never really get a true answer for why we are alive, which is why the only option is to live, and live a life with little to no regrets. Once you do that, the rest is up to the universe. Spike understood this to a degree, which is why his key phrase was,
"Oh well, whatever happens, happens."
Cowboy Bebop is a show that stamps its storytelling in diversity and characters and reminds us to take responsibility for our lives firsthand, but to also not take it so seriously that you can't move on from things you can't control. Because in the end,